How are we to make sense of the tabernacle? When we're trying to understand anything in Scripture, it can be helpful to consider some of the tools that we have to hand, some of the instincts and skills that we can bring to the text. I've already compared our reading of Scripture and attempts to understand it as similar to putting together a jigsaw puzzle. When you're putting together a jigsaw puzzle, you're paying attention both to the images upon the pieces and to their shape. And when we're interpreting Scripture, it's very similar. We pay attention to the structure of passages and books, and we also pay attention to the images upon pieces of the text, as it were. We're looking for literary structure, but also literary parallels. We can see resemblances between other parts of Scripture and the part that we're looking at the time. We can see something about the structure of the text in things like chiasms, those bookended structures with an A, B, C, D, C, B, A structure, and also in things like parallel structures, the frames that we have, for instance, in the story of Abraham and Lot in chapters 18 and 19 of Genesis. In those stories, we have two accounts of hospitality, one that succeeds and one that fails. Two accounts of people met in the gate or entrance at a particular time of the day, greeting some visitors and then providing them with a meal. And then the juxtaposition that arises from that is one being made fruitful and the other being made utterly barren, a pillar of salt. Reading those things together, recognizing the resemblances between them, we're better able to understand what's taking place and the meaning of the narratives. The same skills are ones that we should bring to our understanding of the tabernacle. The tabernacle is given to us not as some plans that are sent down from heaven in the form of an image, but in a narrative. And in this narrative, the literary structure and ordering of the plans for the tabernacle is part of how we come to understand its meaning. The tabernacle is also something that is presented to us in different terminology. The tabernacle is the place of the Lord's dwelling. But the tabernacle is also called, especially in the book of Leviticus, the tent of meeting. It's the place where human beings can have interaction with the Lord, not just the place of his dwelling, but a place of interaction and fellowship. The tabernacle can also be understood in terms of the things that compose it. We can think of the symbolic associations of bronze, silver, and gold. The gold items are described first, and they're especially associated with the most inward place of the tabernacle. They're associated with the Ark of the Covenant, the mercy seat, with the altar of incense, and with the lampstand. Whereas if we're looking at the bronze, it's found in the courtyard, with the bronze altar and the laver. We can also think of connections between elements. There are associations between the altar of incense and the bronze altar in the courtyard. There are associations between the garments of the high priest and particular elements of those garments and the most holy place. We can also see the way that the tabernacle is illuminated through ritual. You understand a building as you start to move through it and act within it, as you see the way that the building serves as a stage for particular actions. The building is also an orienting object. We can see this in church buildings today. Church buildings are not just functional entities in which we meet. They serve as landmarks. As you go around a traditional church building, you can see all the area around it is defined by that church building. It's a place by which people will give directions. They see the spire, the steeple, or the tower, and people can orient themselves relative to it. The building is also a sanctuary. It can be defined in a more concentric way, with the inner place and then the realms around it, for instance with the graveyard, and then further out as you understand yourself ordered around in concentric circles of meaning. It can also be a site, for instance, of pilgrimage in some cases, and in that respect it's a node on an itinerary. It's a destination that you are working towards. In other respects, it might be a central location from which other things are bounded. We might think here of the cathedral at the heart of a diocese. All of these ways are ways by which a building orients a wider realm and people. The building of the tabernacle serves a similar purpose in the life of Israel. Israel is supposed to order its life around this building. And as we make sense of the tabernacle, we're making sense of a model by which Israel would understand itself and its relationship to God. This, in miniature, in microcosmic form, is an expression of how the macrocosmic life of Israel needs to be ordered. A further thing that we need to understand, particularly as modern people who do not understand the way that former societies have generally regarded the world, is the power of analogy, the ways in which realities can be mapped onto each other through analogy. This is expressed, perhaps most particularly, in poetry. Poetry recognizes the affinities between things, and the way that those affinities give us a window into the true nature of reality. And the tabernacle works in this sort of way. It recognizes the affinities between animals, and particular types of animals, and persons. It expresses an affinity between the building and the mountain. It recognizes some connection between the building and the people. And as we look through the tabernacle and its meaning, we will see that analogy is absolutely essential to understanding how it works and what it means. Just like a great cathedral, the building of the tabernacle orients the entirety of Israel's life. It helps it to understand itself. It helps individual Israelites to understand themselves. It helps them to understand the world. The building of the tabernacle is not just a functional entity. It's an expression of meaning. The tabernacle is a way to understand the entire world.